If somebody can remind me to pause it after the presentation to stop the recording before we start back into our business meeting. So I called the meeting to order, and I'd like to say that we acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Hoh, Makah, Quileute, Jamestown Sklallam, and Lower Elwha Klallam tribes. We pay respect to their elders, past and present and future, and recognize their enduring presence and resilience. We honor the rich cultural heritage and contributions of the Klallam people who have inhabited and stewarded these lands since time immemorial. Their profound connection to the land, water, and all living things continues to inform and inspire us. As we engage in our work and activities, we commit to fostering respectful relationships with the indigenous peoples of this region. We strive to learn from their wisdom and to support their ongoing efforts for sovereignty, justice, and cultural revitalization. Thank you for joining us in acknowledging and honoring the original inhabitants of Clallam County, Washington. And I did a little research, and I'd like to say shul, which is thank you in Makah, hot nin, thank you in Sklallam, Ki'tt, thank you in Ho, and Haishka, thank you in Lummi. So with that, I would like to ask if we can just have a motion to approve our agenda, which is a change in the order of our meeting and the rules of the meeting. So if a member here. So move. Laurel.
Second.
And Wayne, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to introduce Robbie Mantooth, co-founder of Friends of Ennis Creek. And they are here to make a presentation to us. And we all have an obligation to please take action. After this meeting, we're going to have some information on how to take action, but this is very, very important. So I thank you, Robbie, for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
We greatly appreciate this invitation to come at a very important time. And I was just thinking about when Ellen and some of the other Clallam County Democrats heard about my concerns that the Department of Ecology hadn't really listened to what the public said they wanted back in 2019, when essentially every single comment that was sent in said we want a complete cleanup. So I'm assuming that is the case still, and they have gone from a level 2 cleanup to a level 3, but only a level 5 would take all the contaminants off. So what they've proposed is to round up what they consider the least contaminated materials, put them on 10 acres of the about 80-acre site, put a fabric kind of a thing on top of that, and then put 2 feet of soil on top of that, and then continue monitoring at least every 5 years to make sure that animals and people and weather haven't caused leaks. And so we're concerned about that. And Darlene, I'm accompanied here tonight. I'm very honored to have our city manager, Nathan West, and Dr. Darlene Schanfeld, who is a prominent and tireless advocate for the environment, and my husband, Jim Mantooth, who is the co-founder of Friends of Ennis Creek, and he'll be involved particularly in the Q&A session. So just a few comments first. I hope this is just the beginning for you to start learning. And it was really fortuitous because Ellen had just talked to me, and a few days later, I thought, I think I'll ask Ecology again if they might possibly have finished the report and could give us a link to it. And by golly, they said it that day. So I do have the link to the finished it's called interim action plan. And it's on these little things around here. And it's also, I hope that maybe we can put it in the chat somehow and we'll figure out some way. So you can just scroll over it, I don't know exactly how to do that. But anyway, that's very important. We also heard from ecology that probably the next public comment period will be from mid-May to mid-July. That's going to be a 60-day comment period. After that, that's our last chance to say what we want from ecology. They'll move on to what they call the final plan, and that does not provide for public comment. So this is really important. Now, I don't expect anybody, well, I'll be very impressed if you can study this plan and understand it all. I sure can't. But I've had to rely on people I trust. And I certainly trust Nathan and Darlene and some of in the city council. And Nathan can tell you why the city council thinks it's so important. So ecology will have an open house, probably in Field Hall, sometime in May, probably. So watch for that, try to learn all we can. And then some of us want to work with Nathan and the city council and have a kind of a town hall in the Vern Burton so we can talk about this. I remember we've been here a long time. My husband and I came here about 53 years ago, and we were in on those early meetings about the Elwha River and the dams and how those meetings were in the Vern Burton. And at first it was just a few people and they kind of thought, oh, now, as it got up closer and after it happened, people are so proud of that. And I keep thinking, can we also be proud of saving what we call our last best chance of a salmon stream in Port Angeles? All the rest of them, the salmonids have been extirpated and they might come back someday. But this stream is known, and many of the studies about it have talked about it having the greatest potential for production of fish. Now, I don't expect, that we're going to have enough fish for a salmon cannery anyway. I hope not. But it's a lot easier to fix things while they're not so broken as the other streams are. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that we have worked really closely with Lower Elwha, Clallam, and the Jamestown Clallam tribes on protection and restoration. Jim and I have protected all our property with North Olympic Land Trust through conservation easement agreements. And we've had a lot of help, not only from the tribes, but from Clallam Conservation District, the Land Trust, of course, the Marine Life Center, 4PA has been very helpful, and many other groups that have tried to protect and restore Ennis Creek. One person I want to mention especially is the former editor and publisher of the Daily News, John Brewer, who was also a passionate advocate of Ennis Creek and walked down there after he retired just about every day and dedicated countless hours to our Facebook page. And I wanted to mention that there's going to be a program at Field Hall honoring his legacy as an outstanding journalist. And I'd say communicator, journalist on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. And that's very appropriate for his concern about Ennis Creek. So, we couldn't have done these things without lots and lots of help. And we're so grateful for that. Jim and I often talk about legacies as we're in our 80s, that we like to leave a legacy of a stream with fish that it can have.
Can you start the film?
Just about ready. Okay. Okay, yeah. So Um, so we have a film to share with you, and some of you have maybe seen it before, but I think every time we see it, we have new appreciation for its message. It was made by John Gussman, an award-winning videographer. So are we ready to roll? And then we'll have a presentation by Darlene and then by Nathan. And then a Q&A.
There it is. Okay. I couldn't find it.
Something as seemingly small as the restoration of Ennis Creek is something that can give me hope. And I think when people see what can be done, every little bit helps.
It's really important that we all talk about Ennis Creek and talk about all of the creek corridors that are part of the Port Angeles community. We have almost 9 miles of Ennis Creek corridor that start in the Olympic Mountains with snowfall and come down all the way to the Port Angeles Harbor. That creek is extremely important to recognizing the value of urban conservation and protection of riparian areas.
One of the greatest drivers of our economy are retirees that are attracted to this community because of the beautiful environment. Restoring Ennis Creek is not going to get less expensive over time, and dealing with these things sooner than later is in everyone's best interest.
There's problems downstream, significant ones, fish culvert barrier problems. It's been channelized and simplified, including its estuary and nearshore.
For the city, I think the most pressing thing is that we're responsible for 2 fish barriers on the lower stretch of Ennis Creek. So it's important that we remove those fish barriers, especially on a stream like Ennis Creek, where there's so much intact habitat. It's important that we remove those to make this more accessible to fish coming in from the ocean.
The site itself does have a lot of history. There was a known native village there way before the Puget Sound Cooperative Colony came.
The name Ennis is thought to have come from what settlers heard the Clallam people using for the area around their village. It is.
The importance to Ennis Creek is a lot of the culture values that we have with the land here. Having the opportunity to talk not only to our own native people, but to the non-natives and what they had seen on these lands as the mills were being built, when our people were being removed, because we weren't citizens back then. We weren't considered people.
By the mid-1800s, settlers began arriving to the area, and when Puget Sound Cooperative Colony was established in 1887 along Ennis Creek, its 400 colonists built the first Port Angeles Opera House, its first office building, the first schoolhouse, a steam-powered shipyard, and a lumber mill.
My dear comrade Jack and I, we would fight.
And then after the colony's demise, then it became a mill site. So it's an area that has seen a lot of history, a lot of different history. That it's not just this empty site, or that it just wasn't the place where the mill was. That site has been important in Port Angeles' history for a long time.
Our goal is to try to do what we call watershed scale restoration, where we try to fix as many of the things that humans have altered and allow natural processes to go forward.
And so we know that the fish are still there, the fish still have the same behavior, but we've got to go back and recreate habitat that we've lost over the years.
without a healthy bug population, you're not going to have a healthy fish population, because those fish won't get big enough to be able to make it out to the ocean.
They are all part of a system. It's all part of a community. And the large wood that results from a really good riparian zone that falls into the creek becomes so much for the fish.
So why Ennis Creek? Ennis Creek is of the streams in the Port Angeles urban corridor. They've had a lot of urban impacts. I think I saw a foothold, a place where we might start something and then work on the other problems downstream, which are significant. And you'll notice there's a dog jam. We put that there intently. That descent with, you know, it's excellent spawning. Really.
Oh, and bugs make all the difference. Everything else, if there was,
Well, we can't get it back. That'd be a good point to stop on. Should we give it up? You think? Okay,
I paid the bill.
yeah. I think we,
Okay.
here we go.
So,
Let it catch his bugs.
oh,
Well,
we can share a link to it too. If it's online, we can put that in the chat too. To the video.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we can do that
Okay.
too.
Okay, so anyway, you get the idea. If you haven't seen it, you can say, wow, I didn't know that was just not very far from downtown Port Angeles, so that we could have a really functioning salmon stream again. There are fish back in the stream. There are some, and we have seen them spawn, which is very exciting. But we think that the numbers are down. They keep diminishing. And I don't know, did any of you ever used to look at the fish that would come up in the Elwha and bump their noses on the concrete of the dams? You know, when the fish can't really live to their potential, it's very distressing to us who love the creek. And I think all of us love things like that. So I think now we will, Darlene, are you ready to come, and we'll hope that.
This is the PowerPoint.
So this is Dr. Darlene Schanfeld, and she is so highly regarded. She recently had a book published about park napping does not pay. She really gets a lot of credit for saving the park out on the Miller Peninsula. There was kind of a secret agreement to let Mitsubishi have it for wealthy people to fly in instead of it being a state park. So she gets credit for that. And she was even asked to be at a very important conference in San Francisco recently about toxins. So anyway, we're so glad to have her working for us. Thank you. And for the stream.
John.
PowerPoint.
Well, thank you, Robbie and Jim and Ellen, for all the work of setting this up. I sometimes lose my voice. I'll try not to. It just comes with aging. So you have a packet. I'm not going to go through the history of the Rainier issue from the time we started working on it back in 1995 to present. You can read that, and there's a really beautiful brochure that I worked on with ecology, and shows you all the contaminated sites in our harbor and what the contaminants are. And K-ply has been pretty much cleaned up. The rest of them, I don't know if Nathan will touch on that at all, but he knows more about the Western Harbor area. So can we go back? Is that a full screen?
Yeah, it's, if I show the slide, let's see here.
That's good. Thank you. So, back in 2007, when Christine Gregoire was the governor, and there were a bunch of us working from around the state to get Puget Sound cleaned up. We got clean up Puget Sound. We got a new department, and she listed 7 sites that were priority sites for cleanup in Washington State, and Port Angeles was one of them. Next. So this is an overview of the harbor, and all the way at the top to the right at the end is the Rayonier site. Next. And these are just numbers of the other cleanup areas in the harbor. Next. This is a picture of Rayonier when it existed for almost 70 years. How many of you were here in 1997 when it would close down? So several of you, some of you were not. Well, you weren't here to breathe the lousy air, so it was better that you came later. Next. And this is a picture of what exists now, except for what's on top of the wharf there. That has been removed, and you'll see more of that later. Next. Oh, we used to have a shoreline, a natural shoreline here. And over the years, as Rayonier built out and built out and built out, there were several different shorelines. And you can see the top, the yellow, and you can see the original all the way back near the shoreline. But with years, Rayonier just put more cement on and more pilings and the wharf. Next. And several studies were done in the harbor checking out what were the contaminants. Now, in 1997, when some of us were able to petition Seattle US EPA to come out and test the waters, they looked at properties around town all the way back to the park, personal properties, and tested the water for several different contaminants, and 2 landfills that Rayonier owned. All of them measured for Superfund at that level. Rayonier was the 17th worst site in the United States for their contaminant way back in the 90s when they were still around. And for the state of Washington, they were the worst for air, water, and soils. Next. So you can see how the area's been divvied up. The Western Harbor is on the left, and what Rayonier, where I would say ecology is determined, Rayonier's contaminants is lined by that green or blue color there, and all the way into Ennis Creek. Next. So this is an aerial photo John Gustman gave us, and kind of in the middle you can see the new bridge that was constructed over Ennis Creek, and Ennis is where all the trees are. Next. And this is Ennis Creek also heading north. Next. And Ennis Creek at the mouth, and you can see the bridge a little better. Next. Well, over Ennis Creek is this problem. It's a landfill. It's a very toxic landfill, and 25 feet down is Rainier's waste. Many feet up, I forget now, it's been so long, but are the waste from Taishua and Nippon and was McKinley dumping there?
What?
McKinley, do you know, Nathan?
I had not heard that.
Yeah, I don't know if they used it, but their leachate goes out into the West Fork of Lee's Creek. Rainier's, one of their landfills, it comes out to the East Fork of Lee's Creek, and then all that comes together under Highway 101 and empties out into somewhere in the strait. But this is covered with plastic, and I hope somebody's monitoring it, because I monitored for years. And I would see that plastic with tires on it, and then the wind would rip it off, and nobody would do anything about it, and I'd call up and complain. They'd put some more plastic on it. So I just hope somebody's monitoring it now. Next. This green strip here, as close as I could get to the waste that's still on site, is buried under that. And there's much more further north towards the water. But it goes on for several yards. So what ecology did over the years was separate our Rainier, separated it into safe soils, toxic soils, but not too bad, and very toxic soils. And as far as I know, all of those are still on the land, has not been removed. That's something that we will be pushing for. We want all this stuff out of there. We don't want a toxic area in Port Angeles. Next. And this is what happens in the rainy season if you've walked on the Olympic Discovery Trail. When it's really raining, the hillside comes down. And in that hillside is a lot of toxins from Rainier, including dioxin. Next. It took me years and well, he wasn't a senator, Congressman Norm Dix, to help me get a sign on the fence at the Rainier site. Rainier put up a fence, but nobody knew why. And people were walking through the site, highly contaminated. And we finally got a sign, but the sign doesn't tell you anything. It just says, well, there's a cleanup here. And if you have any questions, contact Ecology. And if you have any questions about the Olympic Discovery Trail, contact the Olympic Discovery Trail group. I'm strongly pushing for real signs when this area starts to clean up. People need to know what's there. They need to know not to jump the fence. They need to know to keep their kids off and their pets off. They need the truth, and we haven't had that in 30 years. Next. So you can barely see from the hillside the wharf out there. And on the right, there's a fenced area that Rainier owns and had some equipment on, which is no longer there. But again, there's no signs there. And right across the street are homes. So hopefully nobody's jumping over that fence. It is polluted land. Next. Here's what the wharf looks like today. There's the top has been taken off because the fire started there, and then they took off all the everything that was on top of it that you could walk on, and it's piled on site on the Rainier's site, and you can see some of the pilings there in the shoreline. Next. And well, what I want you to see, and it's hard to see, it's all the way in the back there, are the pilings that were taken off the wharf. Next. These are the pilings. There's over 1,000. Most of them are creosote. They're very old. There's several newer ones that have arsenic impregnated into the poles there. And these are all going to have to come down. This is all under Department of Natural Resources. It's their property that is being leased for the wharf. And so they have a very strong part to play in seeing that the place is cleaned up. And you can't go forward and clean up the site without this wharf being taken out. Next. And you can see all the way in the middle to the right, there's the jetty and the log yard. That has to be removed. Again, that is leased by DNR to Rainier. And there's a lot of contaminants in there. Next. What's that? Why did I do that? I don't know. Oh, no signage. What to do? We have to have signs up there next. So these are the contaminants that ecology says are above allowable limits. Even below allowable limits, they're dangerous. And altogether, they're very dangerous. But these are the contaminants that are of concern to ecology. Now, PFAS, you may have heard about. It's the new poster child of contaminants. It's in everything that's leak-proof and waterproof. It's in our clothes, our carpets, food containers. It's in our bodies. It's one of the most dangerous contaminants. And farmlands all over the country that have had sewage waste spread on their land because it had nutrients in it, but it also had thousands of other contaminants, including PFAS. But the PFAS has been killing cattle. And Maine has shut down their farms. Connecticut won't allow any more sewage to be spread because of the PFAS, and communities around the country are doing the same thing. So if this is in your carpets, your clothing, think about what you're purchasing. Teflon, any of this stuff is not safe. It's very unsafe. I can give you a whole lecture on that, but not tonight. Next. And
ecology
ecology would rather, as Robbie was pointing out, leave. So there were 5 options that ecology could choose to the level of cleanups. And each one had an economic price on it. What it's going to cost to clean up to this level. And ecology chose the second one, which was to leave most of things in and cover up and come back and keep checking. We were able to get them to move to option 3, which is a little better, cost a little more, not good enough, because ecology says, well, we'll cover up the sediment where we think it's bad, that we don't extract. We'll extract some of the bad stuff and leave the rest. We'll cover it up with new sediment. Same soils on land, we'll just cover that up. We'll come back every 5 years or so and check to see if everything's going right. And if not, we'll modify things then. Will it make sense to do everything at one time and not come back every 5 years because we're not going to be around. The same people working at ecology are not going to be around. Who knows what Rainier will do by then? So as Robbie was pointing out, we really need to get this stuff removed. We need to go to option 5. We need ecology to consider in their economic strategy that human health matters, that the wildlife matters, that the environment matters, and that is not in ecology's equation at this point. Next. Next. So this was our original shoreline. That's what we'd like to have back today, with everything from Rayonier removed. And next. Your input is very needed. We really need your support for you to tell people in the community this is soon to come up for a public input. We'll put together talking points for you to write DNR, the governor, ecology, and anybody else that needs to hear from us, including our federal electeds. And
for the cleanup.
thank you for bringing that up. Very important. Rayonier. Rayonier signed a contract back in 2000. If you keep us off the Superfund level, we'll do anything. So they signed all these contracts. Part of it was that the three decision makers of the cleanup would be the Lower Elwha tribe, Rayonier, and ecology. And for the first 7 years, Rayonier just dragged them along. We were able to get the governor at that time, Gregoire, to say, no, we really have to clean up Puget Sound. And this site is very important to us. Rayonier, yes, Rayonier pays somewhere around $250,000 to the tribe every year to cover their costs. They pay all of ecology's costs every year. And they're up to speed. Now, they have spent millions over the years to make sure that nothing has happened. So they keep paying ecology, they keep paying the tribe. You'd think if they were smart business people, they would have put those millions of dollars towards cleanup. Well, they haven't. And they may argue, as a lot of corporations do, they'd rather pay their lawyers than do the cleanup. This is pretty typical across the country. So at that point, I don't think there's any more.
That's it.
Nathan?
We don't decide.
Good evening, everyone. It's really good to be here to be able to talk about this really important community issue. I'll try to raise that a little bit. I think it's really important to recognize the power that all of you have relative to public comment. And I think that is illustrated through action in the last process. So the last time that this project, the Rayonier cleanup, was brought forward to our community was a time when we were considering the remedial investigation and feasibility study that Department of Ecology had worked with Rayonier to put together. And at that time, the options for cleanup were not acceptable to our community. And we worked very closely with City Council to put forward some extremely strong comments. And we also saw the Port Angeles community come out with some very strong comments relative to that proposal on the RIFS. And as was mentioned already, that made a significant change. We saw the cleanup level escalate by one dimension relative to the areas on the site that were to be cleaned up. But we also saw ecology lift and change the level of cleanup for contamination acceptable on site to unlimited, which means unlimited use on the future site itself, which is a really big step in the right direction. And I think it really illustrates that if we all come together again as a community and talk about how important this site is from an Ennis Creek perspective, from a community site perspective, we can go a long way to really influence some change. And a great place to start with that is another area where the city has a great deal of control, and that's our comprehensive plan. So our comprehensive plan is the foundational policy document for city land use, and the city has land use jurisdiction over this site. And so on April 17th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., there will be a public open house at the Senior Center where you'll have an opportunity to provide comments about our comprehensive plan. And it's a great opportunity to mention the importance of future land use decisions relative to the Rainier site itself. I think it's also important to mention, if you look at the other steps City Council has taken relative to the site, they're hugely important. And one of those major steps is the adoption of the Shoreline Master Program, which takes into account the future opportunities of Ennis Creek, that brings back, from a planning perspective and an actual design, the estuary that we used to see on the Ennis Creek as it enters the Strait of Juan de Fuca. That's a really cool picture that at least I can visualize that we want to see in the future, bringing back that estuary. When I think there's so many great slides that Darlene shared, and I'd love to go back and point out some things in a few of those pictures. But I'm not going to remember the pictures by number, but I'll talk about a few of those. Excuse me. And the one of the ones that I want to talk about first is, in Darlene's slide, she showed a series of surveys, the historic waterfront. And I think that's a really important slide, because as it is proposed today in the latest version of the interim cleanup action plan that we will have a link for, that's been released by Ecology just in the last few days, that latest design has the stockpile of the contamination right up against what used to be our waterfront, which effectively means there will be no buffer if the restoration elements of that site move forward. And frankly, that's not acceptable to the city. That shouldn't be acceptable to our community. And we need to recognize the importance of the additional restoration elements of that site. Now, part of that is very much Department of Natural Resources responsibility. They have lease obligations with Rainier, where they can tell Rainier, you need to go remove the jetty, you need to go remove the dock, they can tell Rainier to remove the landforms, all of which needs to be accomplished as part of the overall approach to this site and this property, to really bring back opportunities in Ennis Creek for fish. So again, I want to emphasize the opportunity we have here. I think it's important to share as well the technical elements of this cleanup. It is oftentimes very easy to get lost in the complexities of this cleanup. And I think one of our goals as a city is to work with Olympic Environmental Council, to work with Friends of Ennis Creek, to try to simplify and spell out some of that Model Toxic Control Act language that Department of Ecology uses, and put it in terms that all of us understand. So we'll be doing that through our next round of comments on their interim cleanup action plan. And we want to make sure that all of you are equipped with our information to help you all succeed at doing that as well. I think we already ran through a little bit the disproportionate cost analysis. Effectively, Ecology has taken an approach of, they've said, we're going to do a cost benefit analysis, which the Model Toxic Control Act requires. They look at that and they look at the cost, and basically the transportation costs have created a very high price tag, which means the other options 4 and 5, which actually do substantial cleanup on the site, don't pencil out from a cost benefit analysis. So I think taking another look at that transportation equation, recognizing that there's probably other transportation alternatives and ways to remove that waste from the peninsula, is another point that we need to look at closely under this comment period. But again, I'm really grateful that you all are here to learn more about Rainier and Ennis Creek. And I think that covers most of what I was going to share, but I'm happy to answer questions.
The dates of the, again, of the open house.
Thank you very much for asking. April 17th, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that is at the Senior Center. And that's for the comprehensive plan. Now, I want to be very careful to distinguish that from what we anticipate to be an upcoming public comment and public open house opportunity that Ecology will be putting on, that we expect to be happening sometime May or June of this summer, based on the latest communication we have from them. So 2 different and distinct events, but I think both are great starting points to get your public comments in.
And we may be doing our own prior
to ecologies. So we can get the community together, and tell you what to say or ask when you get to ecologies.
Nathan, it sounds like the city's a silent partner in all this. It's nice that you're, on the sideline, but from what I understand, what DNR or somebody owns that property, is that correct? Who owns the property?
Rainier.
Rainier still owns it.
Rainier, but they lease the bottomlands from DNR.
Can you just
And
repeat
what
those
does
questions so
DNR
the
do?
people on Zoom can?
What does DNR do with the property?
Let me, if I can try to simplify and also repeat on the microphone so that people online can hear. So the portions of the site that are basically waterward or man-made improvements that created new uplands are all part of a Department of Natural Resources lease that DNR has historically leased to Rainier. And so a portion of the site is in lease to Rainier from the State Department of Natural Resources. And the other portion of the site is privately owned by Rainier itself. If that helps.
So if all these terrible PCBs and things in the soil and somebody and a big operation comes up and scrapes the soil a couple of feet down, all of a sudden the surrounding water is gonna come in and pollute it more. So, I mean, it sounds like it's very complicated to take the soil off the top and how far you go down, because the surrounding water can just come in if you go down far enough.
You mean the sediments in the water?
Well, the water itself, if
Yeah,
you take the land away, the water's gonna come in and take it over. And
well, there are ways of removing that. This goes on in every cleanup site that's done.
Darlene, do you want to use the mic so that people
Yeah.
online can hear?
Maybe let them know what the question was about the cleanup of
Whether if you remove certain things from the water.
no, if you get down far enough in the land, if you take enough soil away, is the surrounding water gonna come in?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Take over.
Well, if all the what are called improvements are removed by Rainier, which we hope will be done, yes, you're going to have the water coming much closer to the shoreline. And you have to realize that we face sea level rise here. We face serious wave action here. It's going to get worse. And if we don't remove that toxic stuff from the sites, whether it's in the sediment or on land, it's going to be washing over into the community. And how much is washed in by now, we don't know, but it needs to be removed. And we're pretty adamant about that. Rainier would like to remove little as possible. But as Nathan was saying, the city has control over that land when it comes to zoning. And DNR has the responsibility to remove all the contaminants out of the sediments, the pilings, anything that's the wharf, the jetty, all that is man-made by what they call improvements by Rainier. That has been agreed to be removed, has to be removed. And at any point, DNR doesn't have to keep giving them a lease. They could say remove it within a certain time period. But I was just following what some friends of mine are doing in Portland, Oregon. It's the same thing, the same contaminants. Well, theirs is worse, I have to say. And they're dealing with the same thing, having to remove the contaminants from the water. There's different ways of doing it. It'll be done. Some of the contaminants will spread. That's true. but we need to get most of it out of there. I don't know if that answers your question.
Any questions? So, does anyone else have questions?
Just a final quick question. What's the current zone of the mill site?
So unfortunately, that too is a fairly complex answer that I think is important because there's multiple facets to it. There are elements of that property that are zoned industrial heavy still, which is a zoning that is a remnant from when the mill was operating. Additionally, there's other zoning on site, public buildings and parks. But probably most significantly through the Shoreline Master Program, which covers a large portion of that site, there are what are called environmental designations, which are very similar to zoning standards. And when you look at the west portion of the site, with the exception of 200 feet from the historic shoreline, that's anticipated mixed use as the shoreline designation. And then you have a large creek buffer as well as a very large estuary, all of which I believe are more of an environmental conservation designation, if you will, in the Shoreline Master Program. So in this scenario, and that applies as well to the eastern side of the site, which would be east of Ennis Creek. So in combination, there is some pretty considerable zoning and land use instruments in place to protect and acknowledge this site and its environmental importance.
Laurel and then Paul in the back. Go ahead, Laurel.
You mentioned that one of the things that discourages adopting option 4 or 5 is the transportation costs, meaning trucking the stuff away. So, but you said there are alternatives. Would that be like barging? And is that something that's feasible that could be offered as an incentive?
So barging is certainly another option that I think should be looked at. It's one that we've seen our local port talk about, and we're really grateful that the port is looking into options for barging within the community. I think that's important, and I think that would be worth taking a look at. But bottom line is additional analysis would be necessary to look at the transportation information that was put forward as part of this as part of the interim cleanup action plan, and make sure we've taken a close look at it to ensure we agree that that is the transportation cost. And so in this scenario, to step up to option 5, I believe it's in excess of 20 million, and to step up to option 6, I believe it's in excess of 30 million. Sorry, 5. So 4, step up to option 4 is in excess of 20 million. To step up to option 5 is in excess of 30 million. And those are really big numbers when you take into account the amount, even just the amount of fill on site. That's a lot of money. At the same time, those are old numbers as well, and those are numbers that they have pulled from the remedial investigation and feasibility study that they did back in 2021.
Oh.
I was wondering, what's the plan for the contaminated soil, the terracotta pilings? Where would that stuff be taken to, presuming it can all be dug up and removed from the site?
Just repeat that.
Yeah, so I think the question is, where would the contaminated soil and the contaminated creosote pilings need to be taken? And the state definitely controls that to a great degree relative to where it can be taken. And we do not have facilities on the Olympic Peninsula where we can take contaminated soil. There might be exceptions for pilings, but for the most part, the soil, contaminated soil, with the contaminants that we're talking about in this cleanup project, including PAHs as well as dioxins and things like that, those have to go off of the peninsula. And in some cases, Portland, there may be some that can be taken to Bremerton. It's not a straightforward answer, and it requires some analysis.
Yeah, I think the closest regional facility is in Antelope, Oregon.
And it's where?
Antelope, Oregon, I believe is the closest hazardous waste facility.
Eastern Oregon. Yeah, that's what I've heard ecology say.
They want a dry area so that it doesn't get leached out into the ground.
And then I'd say, barging actually has been done quite a few sites, especially in Puget Sound, at least taking it to the South Sound and then putting it onto rail trains there.
Right. So I am not an expert relative to cleanups. I am here because I care about this property. I care about the community's interest in this property, the community's interest in this creek. But our goal is to really equip all of you and help connect you with professionals who do know these types of answers and hope to get those as part of the upcoming public comment period.
If I understand the maps right, the removal of the soil would also daylight the old estuary site. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. So
Sure they know the question.
I think the question was, removal of the soil, would removal of the soil daylight the old estuary site? Again, a very complex site, complex project. There are basically two components, and for the estuary component to be restored, that is actually more of a restoration element as opposed to a model toxics cleanup component. So it would likely take place as part of natural resource damages repairs the Department of Ecology requires, or the natural resource damages trustee group, which includes a number of local tribes and other state entities.
They won't function as a system until the estuary is restored.
Correct.
The question. Did you have closing comments?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I mentioned feeling so bad about the fish when they'd come up into the LY and hit the dam. Well, I just feel like it's just a tragedy that the fish don't have an estuary. I mean, and I don't know how much you know about salmonids. I didn't know much until I started learning, but they have to physically adapt to go out from the freshwater where they're born into the salt water, and then they have to adapt again when they come back. And that happens in brackish water, and there are lots of historic photos of during the Puget Sound Cooperative Colony times when there was a saltwater kind of a brackish bog kind of thing, but that served for the fish. And so just briefly about this restoration without confusing you. Ecology has pretty much wanted the cleanup to happen and then the restoration. If there are some things that can happen at the same time, they're not really opposed to that if it can. But actually Rainier and the tribe, the Lower Elwha tribe, came to an agreement about what could be the restoration. So there are concepts of that, and they're posted on a Facebook page, or if you contact me at ennis@onlypen.com, I can get those for you. But they agreed on that. The problem is no one's agreed on how much Rainier should pay for that. Because again, it's Rainier's responsibility and they don't want to pay what it would cost. So, okay, any other questions? So, Ellen, I have a motion, and should that come later when the meeting gets back and going?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, yeah, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Howard Strauss. I have an environmental cleanup company. I've been working across the United States with the Agricultural Research Service out of Ronald.
Should you come up here, Howard? Yeah, so people can hear and hear online.
It's working on the Zoom.
I'm just gonna close out. Just closing out the power.
I can use this, I guess. I have a pretty loud voice, so I think it projects pretty good. I'm Howard Sprouse, and I live here. I've been here for over 50 years too. I'm a former fisheries student at Olympic at our college here, and I've worked with most of our Northwestern universities and colleges and technical schools on projects that are related to environmental remediation and restoration. I've been working across the United States with a group of people, primarily we've been working on the Great Lakes, and through the work there out of Marquette, Michigan, There's a nonprofit in the area that has been responsive to the needs of cleanup needs around the lake and repurposing of a lot of the lands there, and particularly for Marquette. It's a community. It's not really unlike what we have here, that we have an attractive area that people want to move to, and it's the same way there. And so you're seeing this shift between basically a mining town to a place people want to live. And so we began working with the Northern Michigan University and the community on projects to help a young company get started doing what my company does, which are cleanups and assessments and things like this. And eventually, through the university and through the community, we got on the radar of the Agricultural Research Station. Yeah, okay. And the laboratory back there is run by a fellow named Ronald Zelazny, and he picked the hardest place to clean up that you can imagine. And it has everything that was on the list there, and it's a dump. And they are using technology that is similar to ours. Ours is enhanced over it. I would like to make a presentation to as many local groups to introduce what we've been doing and speak on behalf of the others that were involved in it. So we've been at it a long time at this point now, I think since about 2000. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much to everyone here. And this is just the beginning, remember. And it's going to be, though, very soon, by probably mid-July, that will be our last chance to ever speak up about this particular area and its contaminants. So we really have to get busy. And we have some little slips of paper that have the URL to get to the complete study. They usually put those also in the libraries there, and they have previous documents, piles and volumes of things on all this stuff. So if you really, want to get into it, it's there. But I know I can't understand it all, but I do agree with Nathan and Darlene and Jim and many others, well, over 150 people who sent in comments in 2019 that, as Nathan put it, I keep quoting him because I think it's such a good comment. He said, "We do not want a toxic landfill on our waterfront." So with that, thank you.
Well, and I want to just say that thank you to the city council. I mean, we're fortunate to live in a city and a county where our environment is of utmost concern to our elected leaders. And I give credit to Councilwoman Navarra Carr, who's here. I want you to know that we invited every one of our elected officials. I invited Senator Patty Murray, Senator Cantwell, Representative Randall. We know they've got a lot of other balls in the air right now, but they were invited, and Governor Ferguson was invited. I did get an email back from a representative from the governor's office, and they referred me to the Department of Ecology last night. So I will extend an invitation to the Department of Ecology, and that will give us time to develop really thoughtful questions and hold them accountable for what we want done in our community. The city has stepped up, and our county leaders, that we have to support them. We're the support system now. They're on the front lines, and we've got to do the hard work to hold the folks accountable to get this site cleaned up and to bring the fish back into Ennis Creek. And what did we spend? Almost $400 million to remove the Elwha Dam. And look at the success that is. It's a success story on the federal level. And we need to celebrate those happenings and we live in a place that we need to take care of our environment because it takes care of us. So thank you to City Manager Nathan West. Thank you to Robbie and Jim Mantooth, who have essentially now made this their life's work. And thank you to Dr. Darlene Schanfeld. And you're welcome back at any time.
Thank you. We'll be back.
Yes, thank you for coming. Did you want to?
Well, I don't know when the appropriate time is.
Okay, well, we're back in, I mean, we're officially in the meeting. So Robbie and Jim are members of the Clallam County Democratic Party, and she has proposed a motion. So I'm gonna read the motion, and Robbie's making the motion, but she's given it to me. She's asking that the Clallam County Democrats say that we stand with the Port Angeles City Council, Olympic Environmental Council, Friends of Ennis Creek, and others that have told the Washington State Department of Ecology that all Rainier hazardous wastes must be removed from the mill area on land and in the Port Angeles Harbor. Port Angeles should not be left with a waterfront hazardous waste site. So Robbie Mantooth has made that motion. Is there a second to this motion? Laurel seconded it. And is there a discussion? Anybody want to make some brief comments about this? Strong feelings one way or another? Okay, hearing none and seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. And we've got hand raises at home, so you keep your hands up, folks. Is there anybody opposed on the Zoom? If you're opposed, put your hands up. I think it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks, and thank you for coming. So with that, I'm just gonna, we're gonna resume our business here. I'm just gonna take a pause, let everybody take a bathroom break, whatever, really quickly, and we'll come right back to our business.